Hey guys, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL and welcome back. Now yesterday, I had the pleasure of sitting down for a few hours with a fellow professional artist in his mid-30s, roughly. And as we sat down and as we chatted, he walked me through his extensive career that spanned over 5-10 years. I'm not exactly sure. But he walked me through, he explained what he'd been through, the experiences that he had, the type of work that he had done. And as he did, he rhythmically flipped through his body of work, his portfolio, at least a good portion of it, as far as I'm concerned. And he flipped through his illustrations and his designs, his concepts, at roughly around 1 second per image. So you can imagine how quickly he's flipping through this work. Flip, 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 that fast. And you'd think that as he's flipping through all of this work, that he's flipping through rough sketches, rough designs, a little sketch in the middle of his page. No, he was flipping through full, corner to corner, fully illustrated, polished, line worked, colored, rendered, lit illustrations, highly technical illustrations of background designs in 3D and 2D and environment design and UI design and animation style and realism and steampunk and sci-fi. And I'm just sitting there watching him flip through all this stuff. And I was already impressed within the first minute of his presentation, although that wasn't the point of me being there. I wasn't there to judge his work. I was just there I was there more of in a consultation type of sense. And he kept doing this for the full 30-45 minutes that he explained and walked me through his career. He flipped through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these polished, varying styled, very professional quality works of art. And at a certain point, after around 30 minutes or so, I cut him off in mid-sentence and I said, "Please stop." And he looked at me and says, "Oh, sorry, am I rambling on?" And I said, No. Ramble on, talk as much as you want. That's not the issue. I said, "Please stop showing me art." And he goes, "Why? What's the problem?" And I said, "You are quite literally destroying my ego. You are ruining my ego. I cannot handle looking at that much great art coming from one person." I said, "That you've shown me a body of work that would make 10 individual artists proud if they pooled all of their art together. That would be sufficient to prove a person's artistic and professional portfolio. I can't look at this anymore. I've never felt more incompetent or underaccomplished looking at your artwork than I am right now." And I meant it. And not only that, but the thing that really struck me as well was the fact that he had so many different varying styles of art. From animation to UI design to realism to, more video gamey type of realism type of artwork to more stylized fantasy work to industrial design. We're talking a wide range of different focuses, different professions, different specialties. And in most part, he pulled off every single one of these to a professional standard. And you got to remember, you're listening to somebody who comes from an animation background. I have a degree in animation, and I made a very, very challenging transition into concept art and realism, dark fantasy type of stuff that I am today. It was a very challenging, very time-consuming process to make this authentic transition in my career that I had to learn a lot of things in the process of doing. He did that about 10 times over. And I'm sitting there looking at his work going, I can't handle looking at this anymore. Here's the irony in all of this. As he's describing his career, as he's flipping through this body of art, he's also presenting a lot of stress to me. There's a lot of a lot of rubbing his head, a lot of looking at the ground, a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion coming from him. And I'm quite sure if there was anybody out there who could not relate to what it is he was describing to me, if you looked at his body of work objectively, or at least subjectively, looked at his body of work and listened to his doubt and his stress, one could very easily come to the conclusion that this guy was not allowed to feel that way. I mean, he, by all accounts, to my account included, represents the gold bar standard, the kind of like the the shining star of success for an artist, that he was capable of adapting himself and creating such a polished body of work in such which to a 45-year-old, 35-year-old accomplishing that much work is practically unheard of. But he did. And yet he's sitting there feeling really, really, well, lost. He was expressing a feeling of loss, of confusion, a lack of direction. I'm sitting there going, you have a direction. You have about 1,800 directions you've just shown me. Not only that, but he's employed, he's well paid. And I mean, this guy is about as employable as you can possibly get. He is by all accounts the first person you'd hire if you needed somebody for almost any job out there, professionally, in gaming, film, UI design, in a multitude of different styles. What right does he have to feel lost? What right does he have to feel any doubt whatsoever? And yet, he did. Yet he does. And it's ironic. It's ironic and interesting how somebody with his level of accomplishment, and being somebody who's also listened to people at the very, very beginning of their career, somebody in their late teens, early 20s, who might have little to no experience at all working professionally, again, would express that exact same sentiment with that same level of stress, with that same level of confusion, with that same level of doubt, that I can objectively compare and contrast a brand new bare bones beginner in a professional industry to somebody with a decade or so of experience and a whole body of professional work to back it up. And he's also directed, and he's even gotten into teaching and the likes. And the interesting thing from somebody in my position, somebody who teaches, somebody who mentors, somebody who consults, although the body of work that these two different artists have, although the level of experience that these two artists might have, the beginner and the seasoned professional might have, from a personal, emotional, and professional level, on that emotional level, they were very, very equally matched. Because, well, it's a lesson that I want to share with you. It's the fact that no matter how much experience you have, no matter how many hundreds of hours you've invested in your skill, an artist's confidence is more often than not separate from their accomplishments. That despite everything that you've accomplished, we as human beings, no matter where we are, no matter what age we are, live in the moment. And our confidence, our emotional freedom, our independence, our focus, our organization is relative to where we are at that particular point in our life. A good example of this would be comparing a 25-year-old going through a very stressful event to a 6-year-old going through a stressful event. Although the 6-year-old is stressed out because she wanted something she couldn't get, or because daddy told her to get off the TV. and she wanted to watch a show, and now she's getting into an argument with dad, versus a 25-year-old who just went through a very intense emotional breakup and had to deal with child support or alimony and lost their job. Although these can't even really be compared. We're talking about legal troubles and financial troubles and a broken heart. And on the other hand, we're talking about a little girl who is getting into an argument with her dad over something so seemingly trivial. On an emotional, personal level, the level of stress that you're going through is entirely relative to where you are emotionally at that particular point in your life. And that level of chemical, neurological stress that 6-year-old can be just as challenging and potent and real and meaningful and positively or negatively impactful as that person, that 26-year-old going through what seems to be much harder struggles. Because at that different point in your career, you are faced with a different beast of challenges, a different echelon, a different level of difficulty that's relative to your place. And comparing somebody who's 18 years old, who's never worked a professional job, who's never been employed, who's never received a paycheck, might still be in school, most likely is in school if they're 18, hasn't, maybe they're just starting college or something like that at this particular point in time, is reacting in a neurological, chemically stressful way, exactly the same way this 35-year-old with 10 lifetimes worth of professional experience under the belt. It's relative. So what you need to do, what I want to do for you today is create a distinction between accomplishments and struggles, between what you've achieved professionally and your emotional state as an individual, as an ambitious artist who has a goal in mind. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's very easy to look at somebody like me with a YouTube channel and who runs a school and who produces artwork at a certain level, who teaches it, and who collaborates with a lot of other fantastic artists all the time, and who does product reviews and who has a studio set up. And you look at everything where I am right now subjectively in my career, and then look at yourself who's got none of that, who hasn't yet accumulated this experience, accumulated this workspace, and think to yourself that what I go through and what you go through is more or less important relative to where we are in our lives. What I'm trying to tell you is who I am as a professional compared to you, who might be brand new or might be very early on in their career, am no more, quote, successful or, quote, fulfilled or any less worried or burdened or potentially lost than you. You and I are in very much the same boat. All I am in comparison to you is you plus time. That's it. The only distinguishing factor between you and I as artists, as people with ambitions, as people with focus, people with goals, people with accomplishments, is the fact that I've just had more time than you have. And if you compare yourself to somebody like any of the artists you see online that you feel are accomplished, if you compare yourself to this artist that humbled the hell out of me yesterday as he flipped through his body of work, it makes you feel like your level of worry, your level of concern is less valid than somebody else's, because you haven't made it anywhere, because you haven't accomplished anything yet, because you don't have any money yet, or you don't have a job yet. And what I'm telling you is, don't feel that way. Understand that your concern, if you have concern, is not there because you're immature. It's because you are dealing with a personal emotional struggle. And I'm not only doing this to validate your emotions, your feelings, but I'm also doing this to validate his, this professional artist with this body of work. And it's very easy to look at somebody like that and not take them seriously. The same way it would be very easy to look at somebody who's drop dead gorgeous. Somebody who's just perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect body, perfect ass, perfect fashion sense, perfect personality, the most adorable laugh on earth, beautiful eyes, everything just sparkles. And when they tell you that they're feeling depressed, when they tell you that they're feeling unloved, when they tell you that they're feeling, ugly and pathetic, then you might look at them and say, have you ever struggled a day in your goddamn life? Have you? Honestly, little entitled little rich kid with everything she ever wanted, you don't know what it's like to struggle. You don't know what it's like to truly feel ugly, to truly feel subpar, incompetent, untalented, whatever it is you're comparing yourself, whatever social standard you're comparing yourself to. When in fact, that absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, charming, sparkling-eyed diva, her or his struggle is as valid, and their entitlement to empathy and for sympathy is just as justified as yours. Because regardless of their, quote, accomplishments or their natural gifts, their emotional state is authentic. It's real. Their struggle, their pain is real. And if some celebrity walks up to me, if Ryan Reynolds walked in the room today and sat down and told me he had a hard day, I would sit down and talk with him with as much empathy and with as much compassion as I would if some brand new beginner 16-year-old wannabe artist walked in the room. I would regard them with the same level of humanity, because Ryan Reynolds at the end of the day is just a guy who's just trying to make ends meet. Yeah, he's gorgeous. Yeah, he's got a great body. He's got a great wife. He's got a lovely marriage. Everything's going great. He's got money. He's got a amazing sense of humor. He's, honest to goodness, deserving of every bit of love and affection that he gets. But sometimes he just feels like shit, and he's human. And you have to give yourself permission to, not only permission to give yourself some compassion. You don't only need to have empathy and sympathy for yourself as a human being, and not devalue your own struggles, but also have an open mind to anybody and everybody out there as well, and realize that ultimately we are all, every one of us, on equal playing ground relative to where we are in our life. And depending on what we've accomplished in our life, depending on when we started becoming artists, depending on when we started this journey. Maybe we started our artistic journey when we were 13, and by the time we were 25, we landed a job at Blizzard. Or maybe we started a career when we were 45 years old because we worked in computer programming our whole life and decided, screw this. I want to start being an artist. I'm sick and tired. I can't take this political bullshit. I'm sick and tired of this high-stress job. From this point forward, I want to be an artist, and I'm willing to throw caution to the wind and see where it takes me. Then what that 25-year-old and what that eventual 55-year-old accomplish in terms of their artistic skill might be comparable, but that level of accomplishment that 55-year-old and that 25-year-old are relative to where they are in their life. Yes, maybe that 25-year-old has accomplished more artistically at that point in their life, but Has that 25-year-old raised 3 kids? Has that 25-year-old bought a home? Has that 25-year-old had a 6-figure salary for the last 30 years? No, not at all. So that time that 55-year-old was not wasted time, was it? They just made different movements and challenged themselves with different challenges at different points in their life. And you realize at that point that time, just like accomplishments, is relative. It's relative to your choices. It's relative to whatever decisions you make at that particular point in time. And when I look at a 55-year-old's artwork and I see what they've accomplished relative to the effort that they've made, and I compare that to a 6-year-old's accomplishment or Lucas, my 8-year-old, who shows me a drawing, some Breath of the Wild drawing that he's done. I look at Lucas's 8-year-old artwork relative to that 55-year-old's artwork, relative to that 25-year-old's artwork, and I judge it by its accomplishment, not by its artistic level in the grand scheme of artists out there on this planet. Now, why am I going on about this? It's because this well-accomplished artist was lost. This well-accomplished, successful, well-paid, extremely well-seasoned artist was lost. And he spent most of his career working his ass off, chasing after an end goal, not entirely knowing what that end goal was. And when all was said and done, after he had walked me through this incredible body of work and described to me this incredible career, ironically at the end of it, he said, I have no idea what I'm doing with myself. I don't know where to go moving forward. The same way an 18-year-old who doesn't know whether or not they should pursue art school or not would say to me saying, I don't know where to go with my career or what type of career I want to pursue. It's really quite literally the same conversation I'm having with 2 different people at 2 different points in their careers. And it made me realize something. It made me reflect on my own career. And it made me reflect on thoughts and feelings that I had shared in the past on my own channel. And that was a realization I made after years and years of effort and sacrifice and time trying to become a, quote, professional, trying to define myself, trying to find a place for myself in this professional world. And despite having this body of work and this CV that had some impressive bullet points on it, still really not having any greater a sense of self than I did before I had started that journey. And this is exactly where I found my friend who was sitting there describing. This is what he was rubbing his head. This is what he was rubbing the bridge of his nose about. This is the thing that he was sighing in stress and holding his head and rubbing his forehead about. It was a feeling that regardless of how much tireless effort and ridiculously long working hours. He described working 16 to 18 hour workdays, sleeping an average of 4 to 5 hours a night, and just spending every other waking moment he had working, which was justified because I could see it in the body of work that he produced. He still wasn't any closer to his goal. And I said to him, I did that too. And there was a certain point in my career that I stopped dead in my tracks. And I said to myself, Adam, you can't keep reinventing yourself. Stop running. You don't know where you're going. Stop working hard. It's not accomplishing anything. You need to stop and step back and analyze your life and your career objectively. You need to step back and stop thinking that effort is going to lead to salvation, because it's not. And after well over a decade of working professionally, I realized I needed to find a different path. I realized how exhausted and how overwhelmed I was learning 2D animation and 2D animation software, and then transitioning into doing vector animation and doing Flash, and then learning Toon Boom, and then getting into Premiere, and then learning 3D and learning how to use Maya, and then Softimage, and then learning how to animate, model, and how to rig, and how to skin, and how to edit. And at a certain point, I was just chasing after a paycheck at a certain point. And I had absolutely no idea where I was going with my career. I had kind of been left on the curb as a 2D artist, not knowing what the hell to do with myself. So I went through this incredibly confusing, awkward, transitional decade of my life trying to figure out where the hell I was going to go with my career. I had such an incredible sense of self, and that sense of self was utterly just flipped upside down, and I didn't know what to do with myself. So I found myself relearning, reinventing, and propelling myself forward through my life with nothing more and nothing less than a sense of effort. The more effort I put in, eventually something's going to come out of it. And I realized in the end, I can't. I had tapped out. And from my experience, I had witnessed loved ones burn out. I had seen burnout with my own naked eyes. And I knew that I was a stone's throw away from that exact outcome, that exact reality. I was about to burn out, and thankfully I had learned from witnessing other people burning out that it was a real thing. It wasn't a concept, it was a medical reality, and it was time for me to reevaluate my path. And it's at that very moment in my life, with all the effort and all the experience and all the energy that I had invested into it, that it was time for me to take a chance. It was time for me to trust in my abilities, trust in my accomplishments, trust in my experience. But instead of investing all of that experience and expertise and time and effort into reinventing myself and chasing after a carrot at the end of the stick that didn't even make sense to me, and instead invest all of that time and energy and focus on me, I made a very selfish decision to be selfish, to focus the lens on myself and say, what do I want? What makes me happy? And that was a very difficult thing for me to do, because much like this artist that I was speaking to, much like my friend who I was talking to yesterday, he had the false notion, or at least the unbalanced notion, that in order to find success, he had to please others. And this is something that doesn't only translate into your professional world, this translates into your personal world. That somebody falls in love with you for who you are, and what do? You give up on who you are to dedicate your time and energy to making that person, quote, happy, losing sight of the fact that they fell in love with you for who you were, not for who you can be. Right? So in a sense, you kind of give up yourself to give more of yourself to them, when what you already were was already good enough. So the act of being selfishly you was never a problem in the first place. Yet you had this false notion that the added extra effort of sacrifice and generosity to your loved one, or to your employer, or to your potential employer who you're trying to please, will appreciate that added effort and that added sacrifice, when in fact you already had them at hello. You were already good enough. And in fact, in your change of behavior, your change of focus, once you got, quote, hired, or once you caught the love of your life and had them in your life, was counterproductive. You were actually letting go of the very thing. You were abandoning the thing that made them fall in love with you in the first place, to be something else that they never even asked for. You realize that being yourself, being to a certain balanced degree self-centered, self-focused, allowing yourself to get lost in your own passion, allowing yourself to learn the things that make you happy, that put a smile on your face, that get you up in the morning, that inspire you, is not selfish. It's necessary. Because what you're doing is you're investing all of that time and energy not into making yourself employable to random lover, to random employer, but rather developing a very strong sense of self, developing a very strong sense of aesthetic, strong sense of passion, finding that ecosystem, that environment, that group of artists, that culture, that artistic culture that you feel that you particularly connect with, that little nerd in you growing up that felt a sense of belonging in this particular world. You're allowing yourself to reunite yourself with that you. And that, in and of itself, is the most attractive thing to anybody who cares about you. Because people fall in love with you for who you are, not what you can become. And through his career, through all of this working, through all of this chasing, through all of this reinventing, through all of this perseverance, he did accomplish unbelievable things. He accomplished, at the sacrifice of a lot of other things, mind you, technical skill that was humbling, to say the least. But he never, ever explored himself. He never took the time or had trust in the fact that the things that he loved most were good enough, and that he could invest that energy and effort into the betterment and to a better understanding of who he was as an individual and ultimately as an artist. That effort does not mean being something that you aren't already. And that brings me back to that famous quote, to that tattoo on my arm that says Temet Noske. That means know thyself. I had to give every single iota of my life to somebody I loved, or to my career. I sacrificed everything. I gave my hours, my time, my energy, my effort, my patience, my hours, everything, my health, to make that employer, to make that sweetheart love me more, want me more, keep me around more, be more loyal to me. But to no fault of their own, either my employer or my lover, I just wasn't their true love. And that was just reality. And how did that affect me when it happened? How did it affect me when my heart was broken? When I lost the love of my life? When that job that I gave all of my time and energy and effort into dumped me, fired me, abandoned me? How did I feel? Well, I think what really stressed me out the most is indication of where my focus was at the time. It was, quote, I gave every single iota of me to that person, and it still wasn't good enough. I gave everything in my power to make that work. I even said this out loud to at the time, my sister, who was holding me while I wept like a newborn baby when I had hit rock bottom. As she's rubbing my back on St. Lawrence Street, downtown Montreal, with hundreds of people walking by, and I'm sitting there frickin' weeping like a baby because literally I had hit rock bottom. And she's sitting there rubbing my back, and I said, I gave everything I had, and it's still not good enough. And she's like, okay, Adam, as she's awkwardly looking back and forth at passersby. I gave everything I had to them, and still I was, quote, dumped. Still I, quote, got fired. So what does that mean for me? What did that mean for me at the time? Well, at the time, I felt like I lost everything I had. I felt I had lost everything I had. When in fact, what I really lost was the baggage. I lost the misconception that in order to be successful in life, in love, in work, that I needed to give everything of me to them, that I had to sacrifice my time and my energy and my passion and my focus and my desires for another person, for somebody else. And I realized in the end, the only thing I was left with, and the only thing I will ever end up with is, well, me. Think about that for a minute. No matter what you ever do, no matter what you ever sacrifice, no matter how many hours you ever give to an employer, no matter whatever effort you make, no matter whatever dream you forfeit for the betterment of somebody else, in the end, you're still going to end up alone. You're still going to end up on your own. And as Jim Carrey says, you can fail at doing something you don't love. So you might as well take a chance at what you do. And what I'm telling you is, no matter how hard you try in your career, no matter what you ever do, whatever effort you make, if you truly want to find fulfillment, if you truly want to find happiness, and furthermore, if you truly want to make others happy, be it employers or be it lovers, you need to first love yourself. You need to first know who you are. Because it's only in truly, authentically, and fully being who you are that you are truly and fully giving somebody else something to love and admire. And if all you are is a reflection of the desires of others, then you are, despite your greatest accomplishments and despite your huge body of work, invisible. Because the only most important, crucial ingredient missing from everything that you've done and everything that you've accomplished is you. And yet, we spend our entire lives very generously, very lovingly, very compassionately giving everything that we have to others. Now, am I saying screw your family and screw your kids and screw what my lover wants and screw what my employer wants? I'm going to do what I want and be selfish? No. But remember that everything that you do should come from an authentic place. You are giving of yourself in the way that you give to them. You are sharing passion and love, not because you think they want that, but because this is the way you give love. And you come from an authentic place of affection and compassion and empathy, instead of coming from a place of, I'm sacrificing myself for you. I gave this to you and you still dumped me. How dare you? I changed my hair color and I lost 55 pounds and I went to the gym every day and you still cheated on me. Right? But your sacrifice had nothing to do with their choice. Their choice was their desire. I recognize you as an individual. That's not a reflection of my quality. That's a reflection of your taste and his quality. Enjoy. And the same thing goes the other way around. Your desires, your tastes, the things that you care for, the things that get you up in the morning, the type of career you want to pursue, the type of artwork that you pursue, should not ultimately be the reflection of what that employer asks of you, because I guarantee you there's 1,000 employers out there and every single one of them wants something different. You instead find you first, your desires, your inspirations, the things that get you up in the morning, and build your career around that. It's not selfish. It's not thoughtless. It's not irresponsible. It's entirely necessary. And if you don't realize it now, if you don't realize it in 10 years, you'll realize it in 20. And when that time comes, don't hate yourself for wasting all of that time chasing after a ghost. Instead, have compassion for yourself. Understand that it was a lesson that you had to learn at that point in your life, relative to the experiences that you had, and take it from there. Sound cool? And with that said, I love you with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.